Tens of thousands of people took to the streets across Europe over the weekend to demonstrate against governments imposing stricter COVID-19 measures. In Paris, thousands marched on the streets against the newly announced vaccine pass, set to take effect in January. The new pass would mean only vaccinated people would be allowed to enter indoor public venues, such as bars and restaurants, as well as public transport. Under current regulations, a recent negative COVID-19 test suffices.
I wish to protect our freedoms, and I want to prevent a social pass. Today we have a health pass, which will become a vaccination pass, and tomorrow a social pass, a pass to have social rights to travel. I refuse to live in this kind of world. They're using a small steps approach. They're adding restrictions little by little, and the restrictions we now have in place, if we had them all at once, we wouldn't have agreed to them.
The French health minister said that the government would start giving the vaccine to children aged 5 to 11 this week.
Today, these are experimental vaccines, and I refuse to vaccinate children. Children are fragile, and unfortunately they cannot fight for themselves. Today, it's up to us to protect them, to defend them, and to say no, to stop experimental vaccinations for children.
In Spain, protesters came out for the third week in a row. Organisers say they will continue as long as restrictions remain in place.
I'm not against vaccines, and I'm not a denier. Yes, I'm strongly opposed to the restrictions and the curbs on our freedoms that we've been suffering since the pandemic began 2 years ago. The end does not justify the means.
While almost 80% of Spain's total population is vaccinated, the infection rate rose last week, crossing the threshold to be considered very high risk. Governments across Europe argue the measures are needed to combat a wave of COVID-19 infections spurred by the Omicron variant. So far, few deaths with Omicron have been reported, and authorities in South Africa said the hospitalization rate is 1/10 of that of Delta. In Brussels, thousands of protesters marched through the city, demonstrating against COVID passes and other restrictions.
Our ancestors and grandparents have lived in wartime. They have suffered and died for our freedom, and now it's our turn. I fight for the freedom of the future generation. I'm ready to take to the street and to lose everything to let them have their freedom, which is a fundamental right.
In England, around 5,000 protesters flooded central London, here in Oxford Street. People carried signs bearing slogans such as "It's all a pack of lies" and "Don't comply." Later, police faced off with demonstrators outside Downing Street. More demonstrations on the weekend were reported from Germany, Italy and Austria. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.